So let's take these beautiful words that we just sang as our beautiful mantra to be still, to hold this stillness within us and open to that beautiful energy and powerful truth of our being. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Allow ourselves to feel this expression of the divine life that moves and courses through our veins, that is the aspect of creation that has made us, that moves through us, and that expresses in and through us. Presence and being is a truth of who and what we are. We allow ourselves to feel that gratitude and appreciation for this knowing that we do know. And so it is. So thank you all for inviting me back, giving me an opportunity to share some thoughts around very common experience, I think, that we're definitely experiencing, and that's fear. And the title of my talk is Fear Not. Well, that's easy to say. But how much of what you think and do is based on fear? So I'm going to kind of break this down and go a little deeper to see if we can understand how this thing that we all experience, uh, how it affects our lives and what we create. So the words or the phrase "fear not" uh, was used in the Bible about 365 times. Now I didn't take the time to count them, but somebody did, more or less, and they found it actually listed in there 365 times, which is interesting because it's like one for each day of the year. Fear not, fear not, fear not. So it must be important for us to not do this thing that we always do. And Franklin D. Roosevelt made this expression famous in his 1933 inaugural address. And he said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." Maybe you've heard that too. I don't know how many of you were here to hear that inaugural address, but I decided to go ahead and look it up and read it. And I was very inspired by that talk. So, if you're looking for some reading, that might be something to look at right about now. So, fear is an emotion that we're all very familiar with, of course, and it has helped our species survive. It's triggered in the amygdala, part of the brain that's probably the most ancient part of our brain. And it creates a flood of chemicals in the body to prepare us to run from the tiger, to fight off the predator, to freeze and hope that it won't detect us, or to somehow befriend it, to get it to not be afraid of us. Now, researchers have found that we can even smell fear. somehow, some way, there is a scent that is given off from the body that is experiencing fear. And what it does is it kind of helps us detect some of the emotional currents in the environment. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling it like in waves and waves and waves in the environment right now. So our nose, it somehow, some way, picks up these chemical signals from the sweat of distressed people, and it's sort of like helping us to be consciously not too alarmed, but our brain is really taking note. It's actually picking it up. So I had a very interesting experience once in a New York museum. So there was an exhibit that had a sign that said um, primordial fear. And then you walk down this very, very, very long corridor that was just white. And I started walking down that corridor because I was curious. And about halfway down the corridor, I heard a growl. It was a very low frequency growl, and it stopped me in my tracks. And I felt the surge, those chemicals surge up from me. And I was in the middle of this empty hallway, shaking in fear. I turned around and I ran out as fast as I could. Now, there was a guard posted at the door of this exhibit, and his purpose was just simply to walk people back in after they did what I did. So this guard grabbed my arm and said, "Come on." And he's just laughing and smiling. And I'm thinking, like, you don't understand. I'm feeling a lot of fear. What the heck is this? And so he walks me all the way back down the hallway. And then it turns a corner. And then you could look into the big room there. And it was dark. And it looked like a jungle scene. And all you could see were these two little red eyes peering from the brush. And I sat there and I heard the growl again, and all of that came back up again. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I couldn't believe how it made me feel, the experience I had. And I was traveling with a friend of mine who was an artist and a professional artist. And she said, one of the ways you know something is good art, it makes you feel something. And I'm telling you, that exhibit made me feel something. And it reminded me of something. And I'm like, I've never been in a situation like this. I have never experienced seeing beady eyes in the jungle, but something in me and in my history and in my DNA remembers that and was ready to try to protect me by running out. So maybe you all have had an experience like that was really, really physically a manifestation of fear within your body, and there was a reason that triggered it, or maybe there wasn't. So fear is passed on, and it is contagious, they have found. After catching the fear, we may continue that chain reaction. So we get afraid, and then somebody else gets afraid, and then we go and we alert other people with our our minds and our expressions, and we are creating more of this. It's this thing that just takes on energy. I know you all have experienced this. I know you've seen it. I know you might be experiencing it now. So now an emotion like fear can only last about 90 seconds on its own within us. 90 seconds. After that, it needs for us to feed it with a story to keep it going. So after a while, it becomes a default state in our systems and begins to be the dominant controller of our free will. We no longer are making choices just based on what's actually happened to us. We're making choices and decisions based on everything that could happen to us and fearing what could happen or what might have happened or what happened to somebody else. So a lot of individuals who experience this kind of fear, which builds into anxiety, and anxiety really is fear about the unknown or the future. That's what causes anxiety, when you don't know. And right now we're in that place of not knowing in a lot of ways. And so there's a lot of anxiety. And what it does is people who are already on that as a default, in other words, they're anxious about everything because they have been triggered in this fear state, and they have continued to feed it with their story. They tend to interpret everything in a negative way. It's just how they see it. So anxiety is self-perpetuating. So an example of that they found in research is that uh, people who have fear uh, have a disproportionate um, belief system around their community. So it influences how much danger they think they're in. And you've seen that, where people then hold up in their homes and peek out the window blinds, and they're always worried about something out there. And that becomes a pattern. There's a lot of people who don't live on the border that have a lot more fear about that area than maybe you would or I do, because they just don't know. So we all fear what is not familiar. So that's another thing. And we think like, wow, if anything new is going to happen to me, I'm going to have to experience some fear. So fear is a powerful tool. For one thing, fear sells. Let me get you afraid enough so you'll buy my solution. It's a marketing technique. And why? Because it works. And fear is also a great motivator. So when I was a young mom, I remember asking my kids were playing video games. And I said, I need one of the kids to go get the newspaper that had been left, out in the garage, out in the driveway. So I asked one of my kids to do that, and they started kind of, no, you go, it's your turn. I went last time, typical, arguing back and forth. And of course, that triggered another emotion in me, anger. And so my first thought I had was, I need to control the situation. And so I was going to use the next tool in the toolbox, threat. And I decided to threaten them with fear. So here's the thing, I thought I was going to threaten them with fear, like, you wait till your father comes home, or what would you do if your father asks, to get the paper or whatever. And I realized, wait a minute, what is going on here? This was a pattern, obviously, that for some reason in that moment I had a little awakening about. And I remember asking my kids, now, wait a minute, if I had told you this, if I had said, your dad, I'm going to tell your dad, what do you think will happen? What would you do? They said, well, we'd probably do it. And I said, well, why? What motivated you? Why would you do it from fear? And then they said, well, because, he might be mad, or he might yell at us, or he might do this, or he might do that. So then it was fear that was motivating them. And I was going to use that. I wanted to get the paper. But I stopped and I thought, well, what could be another way to motivate my children other than fear? And so I just posed the question back to them. And I said, well, I could see that. I could understand that. And I thought, is that what I need to do? Do I need to threaten you and motivate you with fear to get you to do some of the things that I request you to do? And my kids were, thinking about it, and they said, well, no, but they knew it worked, they knew it worked. And then finally, one of my kids said, I said, well, how else could, you be motivated maybe to do what I requested, or for anyone, not just for me. And he said, well, maybe we could just do it because we love you. Maybe love. So that was the extreme opposite. Now they were young and they figured this out. They knew the difference, So we kind of set these patterns into motion. And think about it. Maybe you were motivated quite a bit by fear growing up. And maybe we're fearful of not fearing, we've heard that many times, like, we're afraid not to be afraid. We're afraid not to let people be afraid. Well, why? Because then, we don't know what they'll do if, unless they're afraid. So we start also looking at the fact that um, it's a big motivator. Maybe it's your motivator for a lot of things. So I'll ask you to take that in and to think about that for a little bit. Is fear a motivator? Do I use fear to make my decisions? Can I use another aspect of myself when making my decisions? So in the book, I Am the Word, a guide to the consciousness of man's self in a transitioning time by Paul Selig. The guides to Paul Selig say, everything you judge, you fear. Think about it. Everything you judge, you fear. Ask yourself what you judge, and then ask yourself why you fear, and you will know this in your heart once and for all. It's kind of a way to get into the bottom of what is it that's causing your fear. Because you have an investment in a certain way of thinking, feeling, believing, or a belief that your safety and your personality self is being challenged by it in some way. That thing that you're judging, that thing that you're fearing. Now, I'm not talking about discernment. Discernment's another great word. Discernment, when you discern something, it's not to judge it. Discernment is an internal process that is only for you. You're checking in with yourself and discerning why you're going to make a decision or not make a decision, or choosing a thought or not choosing a thought. It's how you reason in your own mind and experience what you are choosing for yourself, why you choose it. So, for instance, sometimes people will say something like they saw a movie and they say, "Well, that movie was terrible. It's bad." So that's a judgment. So we can say it's a good movie. We can say it's a bad movie. That is judgment. It's not your preference for entertainment. It's discernment. You're not saying it's good. You're not saying it's bad. You're just saying it's not in your preference. It's not something you like. It isn't something you prefer. Do you see how that's more neutral? We've talked about this before. But so much of the times we say, well, aren't we supposed to be afraid of things? Aren't we supposed to be afraid of things that could hurt us and harm us? Yes, that's discernment. We should be in our discernment all the time about danger. So also in that book, Paul Selig guides teach that the purpose of fear is to create more fear. If you were to stop for a moment and really examine all the ways we let fear make our decisions, we begin to see how pervasive and controlling it is. Wow. Why do I decide I don't want to do that? Why did I judge that? I must be afraid of something. What am I afraid of? Now, prudence is another great word. Prudence is not fear. For instance, if there are sharks in the water, perhaps it would be prudent not to go into the water. Fear says, I never go into the water because there's sharks exist, period. That's fear. Prudence says, there hasn't been a shark attack on South Padre Island in a long time. I think I can go into the water. Or maybe there was just a report that sharks were seen. Maybe today would not be a great day to go to the beach. So prudence says, it looks like rain. I better take my umbrella. And fear says, I'm afraid of getting wet. Something terrible will happen if I go out today. You see the difference? Prudence, discernment, and really seeing what's there and not just our immediate reaction to something we heard before, something that's a pattern for us. something that we picked up from other people or in other ways. So look around. What we see in others' behaviors and actions are probably motivated by this unconscious or unrealistic fear, or maybe realistic fear if they're having these experiences themselves. Are we judging others as bad when we're seeing this? When we see with the eyes of the Christ, what we're going to see is we're going to see the fear behind that. And what we're going to feel is compassion, and begin to see how we have allowed this frequency of fear to reign as a false God, as a false idol, as what's really motivating us. So now, what's the antidote? So a good way is to begin to examine your patterns of fear. How do you experience it? I gave you some examples of how I did. How do you experience it? And just kind of reflect. What am I fearing here? Why is this upsetting me so much? Is that a realistic fear? Have I been told this, or is this really in my experience? So, and another wonderful way to shift this pattern, if you do identify it in yourself, which you probably will, I know I did, I know I have, I know I'm working on that. It's a pattern. It's so ingrained. So if you need to shift it, you're starting to identify this. This is a pattern, and it's in the field. We're feeding this field of fear all the time. Every time we pass on, bad news, or we pass on the worst example of something we ever saw. You notice how it spreads very quickly. So a beautiful way to do that is this thing that we call looking for the light. And you got to make it a game. Look for the light. And actually, really what it is, it's just our principles. Go back to the principles. So the first principle says there's only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life, God the good. So what is there in that to fear? If we're really seeing that, if we're really looking for that, we're going to find it. If we're looking for those little beady eyes in the distance, we're going to find that too. So what are we looking for? And then the second one says, our essence is of God. Therefore, we are inherently good. That means everyone. If it's true for me, it's true for everyone. Even that out there that I'm fearing it. What do I fear? What is it? If I believe that we are all inherently good, I need to look for that good because it's there. I need to deal with my fear. I need to use my discernment. I need to be prudent when I make my decisions. I need to watch my thoughts and my words. Why? Because of principle number 3. We are co-creators with Source. We're creating this reality through our thoughts held in mind. So the more we fear, we're creating more fear. And guess what we have to fear? Fear itself. And we're off to the races. How do we bring it back? Through prayer and meditation. And even that beautiful song that Emily shared with us was a prayer and a meditation to music. And it helps us align our hearts, our mind, with that higher truth. And when fear shows up, we say, you have no power over me. That's denial. Why? Because I am here for love, which is also one of our songs this morning. That is my purpose. And this is how we live the truth that we know, the truth that was repeated 365 times. Fear not. I choose not fear. I use my discernment. I use prudence, but I choose not fear. And notice how many people out there want you to jump on their fear bandwagon. See them with the eyes of the Christ and love them more. So we keep our minds searching only for the light, for good, for God, in every situation and in every circumstance. We will be inspired to act from that place of knowing. And we will take our action from a place of love, not fear. We begin to see God everywhere. We are being guided to our higher selves perspective. You know, science has proven that our subconscious picks up 40 million bits of data per second. So once we desire to see only good, our subconscious begins scouting everywhere for proof. And whatever we are doing, whatever we are looking for, we will find it. That's called demonstration. That's true of anything we focus on, including fear. So trust in that, in the highest good. And play the game this week. Play the game of finding good in all. Play the game of noticing when the fear is catching you. When you've caught fear, and get a tissue, blow your nose, get it out. Use denial. And allow that joy to radiate through you, because as you do that, as you find the joy, that lifts you up. That shifts your frequency. And then your frequency is what starts to go out into the field. And it affects the quantum field. And it shifts others, and others will follow the light that you are. That isn't being taken their attention away from fear. Staying focused on the good, staying focused on the light, reflecting that back into the field. This elevated vibration is what's going to attract the very good that we're seeking to create more good. It will build on itself, including solutions, including inspired action or solutions in your world, in your life, in your families, in your circumstances. You know what to do. Fear not. I'm going to leave you with a little song.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone. People done gone crazy. People done gone mad. People done forgot the superpowers we all have. We were born to love, not hate. We can decide our fate and look for the good in everyone and celebrate all our mistakes if there's a silver lining. You still have to find it, find it, find it. Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone. Everyone needs sunshine. Everyone needs rain. Everyone is carrying around some kind of pain. I see who you are, you're just like me. I see you're searching for a purpose, guided by a dream. I see who you are, I'm just like you. I get lost sometimes and I forget what I came here to do. I keep on trying, when it gets frightening. Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good. Look for the good. Look for the good in everyone. everyone is love and light and vibration. Look for the good, look for the good. Everyone gets mad sometimes, and maybe they should. Look for the good, look for the good. Yeah, look out for all the heroes in your neighborhood. Look for the good, look for the good. Life sure would be sweeter if everybody would. Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good, look for the good. Look for the good in everyone.